So I just watched every single Nicolas Cage movie currently on Netflix, and I'm going to tell you about all of them. The good, the bad, and the ones that are total dog shit. So Nicolas Cage is basically like the Ron Burgundy of actors. He's kind of a big deal.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Yet he will read anything you put in front of him.
For the last time, anything you put on that prompter, Burgundy will read.
So if you don't know, Nicolas Cage, he got into some money issues with the IRS. It might have something to do with him having bought a castle, a Tyrannosaurus Rex skull, God knows what else, but the guy spent a lot of money. He owes the IRS a shitload of money. And so now he does almost any movie anybody puts in front of him. Some of them happen to be good. Most of them are not. But I'm going to take you on a journey of watching all of them so that you don't have to. You're going to be able to feel what it was like to experience this. It has changed my life in so many ways. I've started smoking e-cigarettes. I'm still getting used to it. I've stopped caring about my appearance. Time is a construct or a flat circle or whatever. But as far as these movies go, the worst one is probably the worst movie I've ever seen, and that's not hyperbole. I'll explain why. And then the best one is one of my favorite movies, and near the top of this list, we've got a really good hidden gem on Netflix that nobody is talking about. So let's start off with the worst and work our way up to the best. The worst being Hello, Darkness, my old friend. A movie called Left Behind. So this is, my understanding is that this is like a Christian flick, even though it's not like overtly Christian in the movie. It's about the rapture. That's not what's bad about it. What's bad about it is painstakingly long. It has long establishing shots of nothingness, of stewardesses or flight attendants or whatever you call them now, serving drinks. And I'm talking about long shots of it, stuff that makes no sense. A scene with him talking to, I think, his daughter in the airport for like 15 minutes at the beginning of the movie. It's clearly made by somebody who has never seen a movie and doesn't really know what they're structured like. In fact, it's almost not a movie. It certainly has the appearance of being unfinished. I mean, I talk about this scene with his daughter being long. Then you're just on the plane forever. I don't mean like you're on this flight, because he's a pilot. I probably should have mentioned that. That's irrelevant, by the way. But you're on this plane forever. And I don't mean a long flight. I mean, you're on the tarmac. You're meeting every single person on the plane. There's no reason to have that many characters in this movie. So it takes forever getting in, and then finally the rapture starts to occur, and people just disappear, and their clothes, there's just a pile of their clothes on the ground. It's absolute nonsense, and I cannot stress, I've seen a lot of bad movies in my life. Rarely would I even consider calling one of them the worst. That's a big statement. This, I honestly think, is the worst movie I have ever seen. Now, an actress by the name of Nikki Wellen is in this. This is her. She is an absolute smoke show, possibly a 10. She's going to be very important as we go on this journey because she is in almost half of these movies.
And this goes on and back and forth for 90 or so minutes until the movie just sort of ends.
And ultimately what we're left here is just half-assed rapture propaganda. I rate this one a watch at your own risk. Now keep in mind, some of these only get slightly better as we inch our way forward, but trust me, there's some decent stuff here. But Between Worlds is one that I'm fairly certain, just by the premise, that this was originally written to be what I can only describe as a softcore pornography. Because the premise is that he plays a truck driver, and his dead ex-wife somehow embodies the young daughter of his current girlfriend. And so he's having sex with the girlfriend. He's having sex with the daughter, who's of age, but she's much younger than the girlfriend and much younger than him. And then he's having sex in this dream state with the ex-wife. And it's constant. Like, there's a lot of it. And it's a supernatural thing. It's a dark thing. And it's not good at all. Like, it's really just kind of a mess of a movie. Redeeming qualities is not the word. It does not have redeeming qualities, but it had little glimmers of like a cool vibe, this kind of morbid thing. There's a time where the daughter's giving Cage a hand job underneath a blanket on the couch, and the girlfriend's standing behind them saying something about dinner, trying to get their attention, and she's holding like a suckling pig that's just blood red on like a cutting board. Just weird imagery. There's a slow-mo thing where I think he's washing his motorcycle and the daughter's hosing him down, and he's just, it's like an 80s rock video. It's just weird stuff like that, but those moments are few and far between, and it's mostly just basically like a Skinamax movie without much skin. And I rate this one a between two turds, because that's right where it is on this list, which pretty much makes it a turd as well. Okay, now we're getting a little bit better, but still not one I recommend watching. The Humanity Bureau. When I say better, I just mean better, not good.
Maybe it's better.
Okay.
But not good.
Better.
So at least with this one, we have somewhat of a concept. This is a sci-fi movie. It takes place, it's not quite post-apocalyptic. Like, there wasn't an apocalypse, but there was definitely a collapse. The movie takes place in New America. There's new territories. There's only a few cities. People are struggling to survive. And Nicolas Cage is a member of the Humanity Bureau, which investigates people and determines whether or not they're contributing enough to society, and if they're not, they're then sent to Eden, which basically means they're processed and they're just vaporizing these people. It's pretty obvious from the beginning, so don't consider that a spoiler. But he's driving this old El Camino with this big old mean grill on it that looks like he could destroy anything. There's like a wasteland, almost. It's kind of a half-assed Mad Max in concept, and then in delivery, it's way below. But this one barely even qualifies as a story. But again, this has more redeeming qualities. I can say redeeming qualities. It's got a good villain, played by Hugh Dillon. I did not intend for that to rhyme. But not a whole lot else. Again, not worth watching. And I rate this one, Oh, the Humanity. 211 is next up on the list, and 211 suffers from way too much setup. I mean, way too much setup. You're 20 minutes into this one before Nicolas Cage even shows up, yet he's a major player, and the reason that happens, there's like 13 primary characters, and they all have their own storylines, and it's so confusing, because you don't know who, there's no focal point, you don't know whose story it is. I have no idea whose story this was. It's about a heist. Nicolas Cage plays a cop, like an aging cop, and his son-in-law is somehow his partner, which doesn't seem practical whatsoever. Nicolas Cage's daughter, who's pregnant with the son-in-law's child, is a major character. There's a black kid that's on a ride-along because he's been getting bullied in school, which makes no sense. He's a main character. His mother's a primary character. Everyone performing the heist is a primary character. A waitress at a restaurant, she's got a storyline. The guys performing the heist. We had this epic backstory that the movie opens with that's really not that relevant. Like, if you're telling the story about the heist, then it's about the cop and the son-in-law partner, and just... So this is another one. As soon as the action starts, it's half-ass action, it's low-budget action, it doesn't work, but it could have been decent if they focused. Like, it could have been a good heist movie had they had the same budget, had they had the half-ass action, and had we just been focusing on the relationship between Nicolas Cage's character and the son-in-law and the pregnant wife and trying to survive this shootout, that would have been a movie. It may not have been a great movie, but it certainly would have been better than 211. And another example of one it's not utilizing Nicolas Cage. Like, Nicolas Cage is over the top, he's bombastic, he's got a very unique style to his acting. And so far, Between Worlds used it a little bit, but for the most part, he's just playing like a monotone, not interesting character whatsoever, and they're written that way as far as I can tell, because he's totally capable of good performances. It's not like he's lost it. He just is kind of stuck doing these movies. I rate this one a 2 -1 -1. Okay, and then this is one of the more disappointing ones on the list because I feel like this one was close and could have been really good. It's called The Runner. It also suffers from a really bad title. There's no reason for this to be called The Runner. He jogs occasionally. He doesn't even run for office. He's a politician, but he's already in office, then he's out of office. So it's not even like he's running for office in the movie. I don't understand why they call it The Runner. He jogs twice, once at the beginning and once at the end, and they titled it The Runner. Yet it's about the BP oil spill in the Gulf, which is a very sensitive topic to me. I'm from that area. My family, friends lost a lot due to that. So once I realized that's what this was about, I was very interested in it. And then once I realized where they were going with it at the beginning, I was even more interested in it. He's playing a congressman that nobody really knows, and he gives this really spirited speech on the Hill, and he tears up and it makes national news. And then he gets people behind him that want him to capitalize on that for his political career. And that clicked with me. And that happens in like 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, we got a movie. And then they just squander it. It goes in so many different directions. Peter Fonda plays his alcoholic ex-politician father. Sarah Paulson, who's one of the like strongest female actresses working today, she's engaged in a relationship with him at one point because he's screwing around with prostitutes. He's in a relationship with her. He's suffering from alcoholism. He's wrecking his political career. I ultimately know what they were trying to say with it, but it wastes so much time on all this exposition, and it's really just kind of boring. But it's well acted, it's shot well, it's just not paced out very well. If you like The Insider with Michael Mann, which I think is just almost a masterpiece, this movie kind of tries to do that and then fails. Now, this is the first one on the list that I can actually recommend watching, but it's not for everybody. If you like those type of like political intrigue kind of movies, this is good enough. Like it's not terrible. It's just, again, it's disappointing because it's a missed opportunity. It comes really close to being a pretty decent movie. And I rate this one a close but no streetcar, only because I tried to think of something that rhymed with cigar, and there's streetcars in New Orleans. No? Okay, and the first one on the list, like I'm telling you, this is every single one. The first one on the list that was like kind of a big box office thing, and really his kind of last hurrah as a big box office star is Next. And in this one, he can see the near future, and by near future, it's like a few seconds, but it's enough time for him to like make decisions and use it to his benefit. And they ultimately don't do that much with it, but Julianne Moore is in this, Jessica Biel. Nicolas Cage's hair started getting really weird around this time for some reason. It's got an odd look to it in all of these movies. I don't know what it is. The other ones are all so bad that this one's the first one that's really worth watching. But again, not a strong recommendation for me. I would rate this one next. It's like the most appropriate thing I could possibly name it. And then we jump to the most embarrassing one on the list. This one, I'm embarrassed to say I liked it. It's called Inconceivable, and it is basically a Lifetime original movie. Now, it's not really, but that's essentially what you get. You get a surrogate, again, played by Nikki Wellen. Gina Gershon is the mother. There's another actress in it that is smoking hot. They're all just, distractingly beautiful women. And then Nicolas Cage is in this movie maybe... It's less than 10 minutes. It's less than 10 minutes. And he does a good job, but they could have put anybody in that role. It's really Gina Gershon and Nikki Wellen's movie. They both do a really good job. But again, I felt like I was watching a Lifetime movie. And honestly, it's pretty slow getting in. And then about the halfway point, I really started getting into this one. Now, the story is pretty layered and complicated. I was surprised at how sort of advanced this one was, because every couple of minutes, the situation was changing, and Gina Gershon starts going a little nuts, and Nikki Wellen is the surrogate, is like a master manipulator, and it gets very dark, and there's some homicide, and just there's some lesbian sex, there's some non-lesbian sex, and I was really embarrassed to be so excited to see this one in. Now, this is not a strong recommendation for me. I would imagine most of my viewers will not like this one. I could have been losing my mind a little bit because this was like the last one that I watched. Yet I'm fairly certain that this one's somewhat enjoyable. So if you're curious in the way I'm talking about it, You can give this one a shot, just don't hold it against me when you don't like this one. And I'm going to rate this one less Cage is more. No, that's not a knock against Nicolas Cage. Despite the content of this video, I'm actually a fan of Nicolas Cage. These movies are just not good so far, and this one's not even really a Nicolas Cage movie. Let's get real. Okay, and Dog Eat Dog is the craziest one on this list. It's directed by Paul Schrader, if that name sounds familiar, or if it doesn't. He's most famous for having written Taxi Driver. He also wrote a bulk of Raging Bull, but then he insisted on there being like a masturbation scene with Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull. This is not a joke, by the way. And Scorsese and De Niro refused to put it in, and so they had to get a new writer because he didn't know what else to write. He's done a handful of movies, including First Reformed, which a lot of people liked last year. And while that did have some good performances in it, I'm fairly certain that's just weird avant-garde bullshit. And Dog Eat Dog is also weird avant-garde bullshit, but it's got this crime element, this hard edge. There's murders, there's robberies, there's cocaine, there's strippers. Nick Cage is eccentric. Willem Dafoe is an absolute maniac. His nickname is Mad Dog. So for all of those reasons, even though this is kind of a bullshit movie with weird, crazy stuff that makes no sense and is not a good movie, I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. In the first 5 minutes, Willem Dafoe has been doing coke and heroin in this pink room with flowered wallpaper, and then murders, I guess, his girlfriend. And it just gets weirder from there. Again, I don't necessarily recommend this one unless you just are feel like you need something to bleach your brain, because that's what this one did for me. There's cool elements to it, though. Like they do a heist where they pose as cops and they put decals just on a navy blue Crown Vic, but they don't even bother to get police to match up. Like the letters are all messed up. Well, kind of fun elements, and then ultimately the movie just kind of lost me, but I did have more fun watching Dog Eat Dog than I had watching any of the other ones. And I rate this one a what the fuck did I just watch? Season of the Witch is another sort of big box office one. It's one of, again, his latter ones, but it wasn't nearly as big as something like Next. It's a fantasy movie. There's obviously a witch. There's flaming swords. It's got like a Game of Thrones-y kind of vibe. All in all, kind of a failure of a movie, but not in a huge way. Like, I can recommend it. It's a decent watch, but it's certainly not a strong recommendation. The best way for me to put it, if you're a regular consumer of my content, this would like never make it onto any of my other lists. It would never make it into a top 10 list of mine, but it kind of gets recommended here very, very tepidly. And I rated this one, it should have been rated a R. The one on this list everybody knows, National Treasure. How do I explain the plot for this one? In this one, I'm
gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
That's it. It has an Indiana Jones vibe. It's not nearly as good, but it's a good adventure movie. It's PG-13. He's Nicolas Cage here. He's not the best he can be, but he's good enough, and it's a fun movie. I have a feeling a lot of you saw this back when it came out, maybe even really liked it when you watched it, and probably instantly forgot about it. I would rate this one a, I think I remember liking that one. And we're down to the last two. If you like this type of content, definitely click that subscribe button and be sure to click the little bell icon so it is solid, so you get notified when I put out new videos that are just like this one but about different movies and not Nicolas Cage. So the hidden gem that I want almost everybody to watch is The Trust. Now, going into this, I expected it to be as good, or let's say as bad, as any of the other ones that I've watched so far. I really, really like this one a lot. I watched it twice within a couple of days, despite the fact that I had other Nicolas Cage movies to get to. That's how much I liked it. Now, it's entirely possible that I liked it so much because I had such low expectations. So, my recommendation is for you to have no or low expectations as well. But in this, he plays a cop again. He's a cop in 3 or 4 of these. Nikki Wellen is in 3 or 4 of these. She was in Dog Eat Dog too, by the way. She was a prostitute in that. What? But The Trust also stars Elijah Wood. They're both cops. They stumble upon what they believe to be a stash house fairly early on in the movie and determine that they're going to work together to pull off a heist. So it is a heist movie, It's very different than any others because they're not really experienced other than being cops and kind of knowing what to do regarding that. So they have trouble sort of planning. Nicolas Cage, he plays a fairly simple character, but a very interesting character that makes some very interesting decisions. Has a funny manner about him. Elijah Wood is kind of funny.
You just reached for my phone?
Yes, I did.
In a suspicious manner.
No, I wasn't, I swear.
That would suggest that you're here under the auspice of illegal activity.
I'll give you $100.
Okay.
All right.
It is not a comedy, but it's got a really sort of quirky vibe at times. And then you get sort of an intense heist sequence that's got a very odd element to it. It's gonna, without spoiling anything, it's the white drawers. I'm just gonna say it's the white drawers that kind of set that heist off for me. It just took it to this other space. I ultimately really, really enjoyed this one, and I rate this one a watch it. Trust me. And my favorite one on the list, another one a lot of people have seen, but if you have not, I highly recommend Lord of War. This is a strong recommendation from me. To me, this is like the Goodfellas of arms dealing. If you've watched the channel for a while, you would know Goodfellas is my absolute favorite movie of all time. This one's not close to Goodfellas, but it has a lot in common with it. Jared Leto is in it. Nicolas Cage gives a good performance as a successful arms dealer that rises like it, we go through his entire career. So in that respect, it's got a little bit of a Scarface vibe as well. It's shot really well, really interesting sequences, just great stuff, aces. My strongest recommendation on the list, I would rate this one a not quite Goodfellas, but that says a lot. Just to rattle off a couple of Nicolas Cage movies that came out in recent years that I did like. Mandy, I liked a lot. I understand why some people didn't like it. Joe is a good one. And Mom and Dad, which is actually on Hulu right now. So that is it for this video. If you like it, click the like button. If you have a comment, leave a comment. All of that. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a Patreon supporter like one of these fine people. They're really helping me produce more and I think better content. Some of you seem to think so at least. So thank them. Now that there's enough of them, we're doing Patreon only live streams. So if you want to get in on that action, follow the link in the description. Check out the benefits over there. It'll help me out a lot. But I've got to start figuring out how to get my life back together after this cage-a-thon. I will keep making movies like this as long as you keep watching them. But thanks for checking this one out, and you will see me on the next one.